We're live.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another regularly scheduled meeting of the Business Economic Development Committee. I am the chair of this committee, Councilor Leonard. Before I start off, one of our council members, Councilor Carson, is not available today. So I'm going to ask Councilor Beck if you wouldn't mind jumping in to cover his committee chair position. Thank you. Okay, so around the table for committee members, we have Councilors Fish, Beck, Balloon, there you are. And if Councilor Mallor is on, he will also be part of the committee as well. We also have around the table Councilors Walker, Councilor Dean. We also have Planning Officer Anya Collette, and we also have Business and Community and Economic Director Ann Creek to join us as well. Before we get started, I do want to let this committee know that I do want to change up the way that we do committee structures and conversations, just to have a much more feasible conversation. So the way that I want to try to have this committee function is, if there are any questions, please direct them toward me. And then if there is a question asked of another staff member or another counselor, I will then be a conduit for that question. And I want to do that just to make sure that we can tame our energies as much as possible while also respecting each other. Does that make sense? Okay, so with that said, but please don't worry, guys, if it screws up this time. It's the first time we'll be doing this. I think we'll get better as we get along with this. Anyway, so our first item is going to be Historic Preservation Code amendments. Anya, would you like to take it away?
Sure thing. So we came to you in February to review some initial changes, initial proposed changes to the Historic Preservation Ordinance based on feedback we had received previously, and a workshop that was had with the HPC and the public in October. And based on further workshops with the commission, as well as feedback from our legal staff and the Maine Historic Preservation Commission, we made a few changes to those. And those were to add some more information for applications when people submit those to us. Also adding a definition of a character defining feature for a historic structure. It is hard to define what a character defining feature is, just because it varies from structure to structure and district to district. There are, guidelines online for how to determine those from the National Park Service. But we did just, do the best we could with that definition. And our plan is to have workshops with the commission over the summer to look at the different districts and sites and determine what are the specific character defining features for those districts and structures, so that when we do the second round of changes, we can really flesh those out in the ordinance. But this first round of ordinance changes is really just to kind of deal with some of the more problematic things that have come up over time and get those out of the way. Additional changes were to keep commercial communication devices like cell phone towers and things like that as needing a certificate of appropriateness, because the commission determined that to have a larger impact than a home communication device, which would just be minor revision. And then for replacement materials, based on feedback from the Maine Historic Preservation Commission, we did add that replacement of materials should be guided by the National Preservation Brief on that. And then also adding some flexibility to the demolition provisions, because it came to our attention that no matter what, no matter the circumstance, the commission is required to delay a demolition, which didn't really make sense. So we're just proposing to make that optional instead. And then also we provided some specific examples of the type of evidence that can be presented for hardship, and providing additional stipulations on that. And that was a request from the Historic Preservation Commission. And we did use examples from other communities like Portland have done for that. And so I did just want to touch on the materials piece of it. I know that's been a sticking point. So we did take the wording from the Secretary of Interior guidelines for that piece of it, but then we added on that that should be done, replacement material should be done when technically and economically feasible to add that flexibility in, even though secretary says in all cases you should determine technical and economic feasibility, we just wanted to be extra clear in that case. And the Maine Historic Preservation Commission did say, you know, that we really should stick as much as possible to those Secretary of Interior guidelines with these standards in order to maintain our certified local government status. And I also, you know, I feel that the new wording does provide more flexibility over the original, because the old did talk about new features should match the old in composition, which basically means it must match in, you know, the same exact material. And so that combined with the technical and economic feasibility, I felt really added flexibility to that standard. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions or comments? Yes, Councilor Beck.
Yeah, the question I would have is just looking for like how it would apply to an example. I mean, obviously, we're all well aware of the slave versus asphalt, you know, situation that came up recently. Being that the material looks like slate, but isn't quite slate, does this give the flexibility to be able to make the determination of, yes, go ahead and use the asphalt instead of the slate?
Officer Collette, are you, is that a question transparent for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the commission, so I can't, you know, say that, but I do feel like with this, you know, we're taking out some of the wording, like again, composition, and adding in adjectives like color instead. And I do feel like, and then adding in that economically and technically feasible piece does give the commission kind of a way to say, you know, in certain cases, it's not feasible to use slate instead, and maybe we can use asphalt. So I do feel like it gives them more flexibility with that.
Did that fully answer your question, Councilor Beck?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments at this time? If there are none, I have nothing further to add, unless staff, if you have anything else that you would like to add. If none, I'm not seeing Councilor Mallard on, so I would be looking for a motion on this item.
You all, I don't know if you're taking public comment, but there might be someone here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Do we have anyone who would like to speak on this item? I will allow you to do public comments, sir. Absolutely. Let me just make sure.
Nope, that doesn't.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you, Courtney.
Yep.
Hey, my name is Rick Violet. I'm a general contractor here in Bangor. And I also happen to be a part owner of a building that's in the Broadway Historic District. And I also worked with Steve Barron, who was the one who had the issue with the roof. I commend the Historic Preservation Commission for making an attempt to make the ordinance clearer. The historic property owners that I've met with and who I've worked with over the last year don't feel that that's being accomplished by these ordinance changes. First of all, there had been a requirement that that materials replacing previous materials had to match in composition. Now it says they have to match in composition. It doesn't, excuse me, doesn't say composition. It says, it's the right page. It says they have to match materials when technically and economically feasible. There isn't any definition of what technically and economically feasible means, which means that if based on that standard, the commission decides you need to replace a slate roof with a slate roof, then the applicant gets bumped into trying to prove hardship rather than knowing in advance whether something is technically feasible. That's one issue that we have. The main problem that we keep running into, and whether it's slate roofs or windows, is that we can't tell when we read the ordinance when somebody's going to be required to replace slate with slate or a wooden window with a wooden window. We presented both to the commission and to the council sometime, I think last fall, some proposed amendments that our group of property owners has worked on. Basically saying if it matches in looks, if you from the street it looks the same after the change as before the proposed change, then the materials should be acceptable. What we're up against every time we raise that issue and say, look at the times that you have allowed slate to be replaced with asphalt, slate to be replaced with metal, slate to be replaced with some other product. Why doesn't that set a standard for what is allowed? And well, we don't have precedent. We don't, the fact that we decided something this way on 5 other occasions doesn't mean we have to on this next occasion. That doesn't make sense when we try to read an ordinance and try to figure out what somebody is required to do when they come before the commission for approval. I asked recently when we were before the commission regarding windows. We were told, well, you better be prepared in case they want the wood windows replaced with wood windows, even though on many occasions they have approved vinyl windows that look the same from the street as the wooden windows. And my question to the commission was, how do we know? How are we supposed to know when vinyl replacement windows, and I don't use that in a pejorative sense, that I'm not talking a standard replacement window that you would pick up at Lowe's or Home Depot. I'm talking about a window that would look in all respects like the window being replaced. And I was told, well, it has to do with whether it's a character defining feature. Look in the ordinance, read the ordinance, and tell me how I can tell whether something on my property is a character defining feature. I can't. I've looked through National Park Service Brief 17. I still can't tell unless I'm looking at pictures. That's what they use to determine character defining features. We were told that, well, we've incorporated something new in that once you've submitted an application, we meet with the consultant, Mike Pullen, to find out what his recommendations are going to be and what's going to be required. First of all, there's nothing in the ordinance that allows Mike to decide what is and what is not a character defining feature. Secondly, I don't think owners of historic properties ought to be required to go to the expense of doing an application, providing all of the information that is required of the ordinance, and have to wait until a week or two before a meeting with the commission to meet with Mike Pullen to be able to know whether Mike decides that these windows are important enough, they've got to be wood. The rest of them can be vinyl. I don't think that these proposed amendments are doing that. We have proposed to the council and to the commission, and I don't know whether I think there's been an election since we presented this stuff to the council. Some of you were probably on the council and received what we presented at a meeting several months ago. I have a couple of copies. I don't have enough for everybody here. I also have couple of memos that outline our concerns. Those are two different memos, by the way. Again, I wasn't sure how many were going to be here. And I know Anja and Ann already have copies. It's our position as owners of historic properties that more work needs to be done on the ordinance, and that the stakeholders, and I understand the city is a stakeholder, but so are those of us who are trying to maintain our properties, need to be invited, need to be involved, and need to be listened to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I very much appreciate your clarifying word, because I do have a question about a term he kept using, which was character. Is that an appropriate question to ask you regarding how we can make it clearer to people about what is a character trait?
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at earlier. I know that it's difficult to determine what a character defining feature is, and that's why I had proposed to go to the commission and do workshops this summer, talking about what those are for each district and site, because it's going to be a lot of work, because it's hard to determine. And Mike Poland, we relied on him, our advisory consultant commission, we relied on him to provide that, because he's an expert in architecture and in Bangor's historic districts and sites. And so the commission relies on him to really give that guidance. And that is why I had started proposing to do pre-application meetings with people, with applicants and Mike Poland before commission meetings when they do propose more major projects, so that we can get Mike's expertise beforehand and kind of work through any issues with them, go over character defining features and things like that. I do think it's been beneficial for people. And actually Steve Farron's window project was approved. And I think the guidance from Mike Poland at that pre-application meeting did help. But yes, it's just going to be a long process to really better define what those features are. And I probably won't even be able to work on the second round of ordinance updates till this fall. But I just, I was trying to really get through some of the easier changes with this and then do the second round later. So there's that.
I do understand the logic behind that, because I know there's only so much that we can do in a short period of time, and I will be interested to hear how everything goes on during the summer regarding the future changes that you guys will be working out. And did you have something you want to say?
National Park Service does define character defining features as things like overall shape and massing, materials, craftsmanship. Like, for example, like a post on a porch on a Greek revival has limited meaning, but on a bungalow it has a lot more meaning, because it's part of that craftsmanship and that style of home. So I think this district by district analysis is going to be very helpful, because there are dominant features in each district that are in some cases very different from each other.
So from what I'm hearing, I think we're still going to want to go forward with these changes as is right now. I see this as like a stepping stone for how we're going to go about a lot of these issues that you guys are seeing into the future. I would like to see this again at some point in BED, just to get a further update on this. And if there are any other questions from similarly minded citizens, I do want to make sure that there's an open communication between those two entities as well. Does that make sense? Or any questions about that?
I don't have any. I know he has another question.
Okay, well, I do want to give Councillor Fish the floor.
Thank you. I was wondering if we might not be able to see, it's been months, I know, we did get the email with the suggested ordinances. or some recommendations and having probably my error, but it would have been nice if I had thought of that earlier to be able to compare what the stakeholders. I do have your memo, but I don't have what was sent in November. Just to be able to compare what, what this ordinance may have addressed from regional suggestions to what we might still be lacking, so.
I'll give you the copies that I have.
Can we send it to the full committee as the chair wants?
If that would, I'm sorry, did you have the rest of your question to ask, Councilor?
So my point was, perhaps we can elaborate as to if these amendments, where I don't have the luxury of time to be able to, hear directly, either maybe table this decision till we have a chance to look at these and compare, or maybe you can specifically address some of the concerns presented in November and how they are addressed now and what may not still be addressed that we can continue to work on. Did I make that question clear?
Yes, you did. So before you respond to your question, if you need me to elaborate, happy to. In addition to that, would you see an issue tabling this to a future DED date, or is this a time sensitive?
It's not exactly time sensitive. There's just, one of the major issues that has come up with the current ordinance is that it requires an affirmative vote by 4 members to approve the certificate of appropriateness, and we often struggle to get 4 people to come to the meeting. And so, and that actually had posed an issue for Steve Barron's project quite a few times. So that was, but it's not been dealing with that for years, so we can deal with it a little longer.
So we would wholeheartedly.
Excuse me, sir, I'm really sorry. So it is, those have been issues multiple times with this committee. And so it is my understanding that just based on that alone, that this is something that I would like to see passed. I mean, I am hearing your concerns and your concerns, sir, do not get me wrong, but I also want to make sure that this committee is functional and is able to actually respond to things in a orderly and timely fashion as well. I guess one thing I would ask staff is, did you see the entirety of this ordinance to be recommended to pass in full, or could we partially move some things forward in order to help with the committee's just overall bureaucracy?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't started the formal process, so we could just revise the ordinance and then send that through if you wanted to just have that be for the number of members that need to approve their certificate. We could just make it that change for now, so.
I just want to direct a question back to you, Councilor Fish. Would that settle some of the
Seems to
concerns?
make sense, because that seems to be mutually agreed from the public and from all the parties that that's been a problem. So if we could resolve that issue right away and then table the rest of it until we have a chance to just digest everything and maybe be able to direct more questions in between now and coming back.
Okay. So I guess a general question is, with that amendment, are there any issues with staff or other fellow councilors about that amended change to this? Are there any further questions or discussions that this committee would like to have on this matter? Yes, Councilor Beck.
I guess the question I'm just trying to determine, both from public comment and this, is that is it that the amendments they're making are wrong, or they're just not good enough now? Like it's just not objective enough. I'm also wondering if it makes sense if this is solving some problems, and then there's more work to be done, we can come back again and further amend it. I just don't know what we're leaving off the table that being, rectified in the short term by this, that we're not rectifying by not passing it, if that makes sense. And then, of course, the idea that we're going to come back with more feedback and everything else for further amendments. That's only my question. That's my question.
If that's clarifying for you, but before you respond, depending on your answer, we could also table this to, if need be, a special BED workshop before council this coming Monday. I'm open to that as well if we want to have a longer conversation about this. But what would be your answer to Councilor Beck's questions, if you remember?
Sorry, I'm not quite understanding the question.
Sure. The question I'm asking is, people who are investing in these properties, they're looking for some more objectivity versus, rolling the dice with the commission on some of this stuff. And I'm just wondering if, the changes that are made to this point, obviously they're alleviating some of the issues that have come up to this point. Does it make sense to pass this as a starting point and then come back and then amend it further as more workshops are had and more feedback's collected to try to fine tune some of that objectivity that they're looking for?
Well, I guess number one, I would say we're planning to do that anyway with round 2 of the ordinance updates. We're planning, again, to better define character defining features based on district and site, and then add guidelines for like new construction and things like that in the historic districts. I will also say, and I don't have the proposed ordinance amendments in front of me. I can just kind of, just going off the discussion that was had with the commission about those, some of the proposed amendments there actually in some ways make things more subjective. And then also adding objectivity as far as the technical and economic feasibility, I looked extensively into that, and there's not a good way to define economic and technical feasibility that doesn't tie the hands of the commission and really the applicants, because every situation is different. And so you could define it and then somebody comes along and they have a new situation that's valid, but because we've defined it a certain way, they don't meet that guideline anymore. And so in some cases, and that's why I think some subjectivity is necessary, because it allows flexibility for the variety of situations that might come up. So I think we just have to be careful with that. And I don't know if Anne, you have anything to add?
Well, I was just gonna
Yes.
point to the committee, there is a list of examples of evidence, when there is an extenuating circumstance that was not in here before, that includes things like an appraisal, availability. I mean, we know that the availability of artisans that do a lot of this type of work are few and far between in Maine. So there's recognition of that in here that wasn't there before, that's in this proposed language. So, I mean, I do think it does address a lot of the issues that have come up recently.
If I may, that was my initial read of this. I do hear the concerns that Councillor Fish has brought up. I would rather evolve this committee and evolve these problems that we have toward a path of progress more than hinder for the sake of being cautious in terms of like how we get toward a better place of how to deal with these issues in the future. Unless this committee sees otherwise, the way I see it, I would want to see this recommended by this committee as is, but if there is enough committee members who want to see this amended, of course, you are welcome to propose that amended version as well. But if it were up to me, I would want to see this proceed forward as is. Are there any further comments, questions, or discussions that this committee wants to have at this point? Seeing none, I would entertain any motion at this time.
I would move to send the full recommendation as is to the recommendation as is to full council.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. We will do a roll call vote. Councillor Beck,
Yes.
Counselor Fish. Counselor Falloon,
Yes.
Counselor Mallard,
No.
and I will be a yes. That will be 3-2. This will move on. Next is going to be the solar feasibility report, and is this gonna be
Actually, our intern, Amelia. can help.
oh, perfect, fantastic.
There's a seat of me.
So this is Amelia Mooney. She is our sustainability intern in the department. She's a recent grad at UMaine. And since she's been working with us, she's been working very hard on the solar feasibility report that's in your packets to look at the potential for solar on all city rooftops. And she also looked at some of our parking lots. Really just to see what the capacity was and also what would the potential cost savings be. We did exclude the airport buildings just because there were concerns about FAA requirements and things like that. But we pretty much included every other type of city building. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Amelia to make her presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Anya, for your introduction. So as Anya said, the study involved city-owned buildings that contain municipal operations. And the analysis included looking at annual electricity use, as well as costs, and the potential to have rooftop solar arrays on the buildings that were analyzed, and the costs and benefits of doing so. The reason why we did this study is because energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction is important at both local, regional, and state levels. Both the state and the Penobscot Climate Action Region both have goals in their climate action plans for both increased energy efficiency from renewable resources as well as reducing greenhouse gases. And the city of Bangor, as a part of both of these, can influence the potential for working towards those goals. Rooftop solar is one way we can work towards improving energy efficiency. And with a lot of municipal buildings in Bangor having underutilized rooftop area, there's potential to implement rooftop solar arrays to offset the electricity needs at those locations. So to get into some specifics, the study involved 22 buildings, all owned by Bangor. And for each of these, we looked at recent utilities bills, and were able to come up with an estimate of the average annual energy use and average annual energy costs. To estimate the solar potential, we used an online calculator called PV Watts. This was created by the National Laboratory of the Rockies. And what it allows you to do is look at these buildings from an above view, like on Google Maps, and you can trace the rooftop area. And using that information, it will tell you how much energy could be potentially generated at that site. So we use that to get a general estimate of energy production at each building. And then other calculations were based on information from online solar energy resources. So across all 22 locations, we found that they were using about 9.4 million kilowatt hours annually. This is about the equivalent of 562 gas-powered cars on the road for 1 year. So across these buildings with that energy consumption, and under the prior electricity rate, it was costing about $1.5 million a year. And having a greenhouse gas emissions of about 2,300 metric tons of carbon dioxide every year. So across these 22 locations, there were 6 found to be most feasible for rooftop solar, considering their estimated payback period under the prior electric rate. With the recommended installations at these 6 locations, which I'll mention in just a moment, there's a potential to offset 33% of their combined electricity needs and 26% of their carbon dioxide emissions. So these 6 locations are Fire Station number 6 at 11 Griffin Road, the Abbott Square parking lot, City Fleet Maintenance, the Golf Course Clubhouse, one of the buildings leased by the Community and Economic Development Department at 39 Florida Avenue, as well as one of the water treatment pump stations. I do want to mention that the estimates that led to selecting these locations specifically were made using prior electric bills, for which each building was paying a different electric rate. The overall cost for those estimates was higher, and thus the expected savings from implementing solar was also higher. Under a new electric rate, though, the city is now going to be paying a fixed electricity rate for the next 18 months. It is going to be lower, so the amount that the city is going to be paying for electricity is going to be lower, but the estimated savings from implementing rooftop solar won't be as much as we estimated before. So just to give a few specifics for those buildings, our prior electricity estimate was around, or the electric cost for those 6 buildings was around $175,000. But under the fixed electric rate, it'll be looking more like $60,000. And then in terms of annual savings, before it was looking like $70,000 for implementing solar. But with the new electric rate, it'll be looking more like $20,000 a year. So what does this mean? Under the prior electricity rate, we expected a higher savings, and this would have had a lower payback period for these installations. But since the estimated savings is now going to be lower, that means that the estimated payback period for these installations is going to be a lot greater. So it's not really providing as much of an economic benefit to the city to do rooftop solar at this time, unless the city is able to access outside funding of some form. In the future, if a new contract is negotiated and the electric rate is then higher, it might then be beneficial for the city to pursue rooftop solar. And if that's the case, then those 6 locations identified by the analysis are the ones that we recommend be prioritized. In terms of financing, other municipalities have received community action grants for rooftop solar installations. Mount Desert is one of these towns. They have rooftop solar installations on their town garage, the wastewater treatment plant, as well as their fire station, and this has helped them to offset a large portion of their electricity needs at these locations. Bangor has also previously received a community action grant, and there's a potential for Bangor to pursue one focused on solar in the future. Recent rounds of the community action grant have been up to $75,000, which would be more than enough to cover the estimated costs of the installations proposed by this analysis. If fully covered by a community action grant, the payback period of the installations would then be 0, and the city would then be seeing immediate cost benefits from those installations. There are other options to financing solar arrays. Some municipalities have gone with direct ownership, and this would require having the upfront or the amount to pay the upfront cost right away. Other municipalities have also done power purchase agreements. This would involve working with a third party to install and maintain the array, and the city would pay a fixed electric rate over a longer period of time, and wouldn't have that high upfront cost. So there's some different financing options to consider for rooftop solar. I did want to feature a few of the 6 buildings just to give you guys a little bit more detail about those. So one of those was fire station number 6. At this location, the proposed installation would be 14 kilowatts and would cover 24% of the building's current electricity use for about $55,000 as an upfront cost. And so this would be completely covered by one of the community action grants if the city were to receive one of those. And then the rest of the money could go to another potential installation. Another one of the buildings was the one leased by the Community and Economic Development Department at 39 Florida Avenue. A 10 kilowatt installation at this location would completely cover the location's electricity needs. for an upfront cost of $38,000. So a little less than the one at the fire department, or at that fire station, and would completely cover the needs at that location. So across both these two, there's an estimated savings of $3,300 a year, or around $100,000 over the expected lifetimes of both of those systems. So just to wrap up what I've presented to you all, the results weren't what we expected and maybe hoped for, because rooftop solar is a pretty exciting thing, and definitely has the potential to reduce emissions and have savings if the payback period is within a reasonable range. However, with the estimated savings that we estimated, it's not looking like at this time rooftop solar is going to be something that will be economically beneficial. But the buildings that we did identify definitely have the potential to inform the city's approach to solar implementation if it does become feasible in the future. For now, it may be more beneficial for the city to focus on other methods to improve energy efficiency and reduce carbon emissions. If the city's looking to support solar in another way, community solar might be an option to look into. Some of the schools are currently participating in community solar. And so through that sort of opportunity, we wouldn't have solar installations directly on municipal buildings, but instead we'd partner with a local community solar farm, and we would get the benefits of the energy production there, and this would offset our electricity costs instead. Lastly, the projects feasible now they might be feasible in the future if the electric rate is to change under a new contract. So if that electric rate is to go up in the future and solar becomes more beneficial, then we recommend that those 6 locations, as mentioned, be ones that are prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you, and great job, by the way. I was also shocked to see that we wouldn't be saving nearly as much money as I thought. I think not including the airport, and I get why we weren't able to include the airport. It is a big blind spot, but to what you said at the end, if we were to go forward with this in some capacity, just from a security standpoint, I'm always looking for things to help reduce our issues that we may or may not have with our aging grid in this state. And so solar is a way for us to actually make ourselves safer from an energy consumption perspective. So I would be in the future open to looking to community farms and collaborations. Maybe the airport would want to collaborate with us. But anyway, yeah, thank you so much. Staff, did you have anything that you want to add off of her report?
I just wanted to reiterate one point she touched on about if we did receive grant funding to pay for an installation, obviously we would see the savings right away. And so if council was amenable, if the community action grant, there is another round come up, I don't know if that's something you might want us to pursue. Just a question I want to put out there. And then on top of that, you mentioned resilience. We could, if we received a $75,000 grant, we could, for example, possibly pay for an installation at one of those buildings and add battery storage. And so, which would help in case of power outages and things like that. So.
Sure. I mean, I can speak for myself. Of course, if we get the grant, that makes a lot of sense to me. If other counselors want to have questions or other comments they want to make, of course, we'll entertain them. I will do Councillor Falloon first and then Councillor Fish.
2 questions, if I may. The community action grants, who are those a state grant?
They're through the state.
No, you're and then second question.
Yeah, so my second question would be if there are any grants through Efficiency Main Trust, or if that is something that they looked into.
Not at this time that I'm aware of. Unfortunately.
Okay, thank you for those questions. Councillor Fish.
Thank you very much for this very great detailed report. And yeah, I was surprised of the savings in one way, but many of the properties over the last 10 or 15 years that I've worked with, especially those that are remote rural areas of Maine and are commercial, and they've done a lot of solar over the last 10 or 15 years, we're finding that as the software changes, sometimes the generation of the battery backup doesn't jive with the software, and the life expectancy of the solar panels starts to also degrade. And so they finally get to the point where it's getting cost effective because also, as I noticed in here, some of these rates are only fixed for a year and then the rates change. So after a 10-year process, what we have found a lot of times is the maintenance and the upgrades between the software and the generation of backup batteries and then the degrading solar panels. This report is helpful because if they had been able to have this kind of research, I think they could have made perhaps other decisions. So I think it's still early. I know solar's been around a long time, but I think we have a long ways to go before we can really see how we can benefit from it in a cost-effective way. But it's good to keep having it as an option on the table, and this is great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fish, for those comments. Any other comments or questions on this item? Yes, Councilor Beck.
There are a few questions. On page 3, I'm assuming that the total consumption also includes the Cross Insurance Center? Please.
Well, Cross Insurance Center was not included in the analysis.
Okay, to my next question, I guess, because what jumped on me was the community solar piece. And if the school is able to, if the schools are able to realize 50,000 savings in their first year, I'd be curious to hear what kind of, comparable savings we would get if we were to look into the community solar piece.
Would staff be able to elaborate on that a bit?
On what the savings would be?
Right, if the city is getting $50,000 in the first year in savings, what could the city expect if we were to look at some kind of a community solar program like they did?
It would really vary. I think we would have to dig into that more.
Yeah, I know that the schools, it's all of the schools participating. So there's definitely potential to participate in something like that across a wide level, but I think we'd have to do more research to have an estimate of how much we could potentially save.
If possible, I think that would be appropriate, especially if we're coming back to the community solar farm topic later on. I think that would be some good data to have alongside it. You had another question, Councilor Beck?
We'll do a follow-up to that. So outside of staff time of having to set it all up with whoever the vendors are, does it take any other investment from us to be able to take advantage of that?
Community solar?
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's just basically a subscription. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Please.
because just for myself, it just seemed like it would be something worth it. We're not going to pursue, having our own physical. I mean, if there's savings involved with that, I would be in favor of us, looking into doing the community solar and, whatever the savings would be, something better than nothing if it exceeds what staff time would be involved in trying to get it going.
Thank you for those comments. Yes, Councilor Fish.
And just to elaborate on that too, the savings beyond the first year, like what potential is there ongoing, there's savings the first year. But when we take into effect any other with a community solar, I don't know how that would work as far as you wouldn't have the hardware and the software issues as you would individually, but what other impacts financially would there be beyond that first year, financial impacts? That would be good to know.
With community solar, it's not, again, like it's just a subscription. And so I don't think
It would be fixed, so after, would it be
Yeah.
fixed for a year or would there be a fixed or what would the rate?
the savings really varies based on, how much solar energy they're getting and how much energy you're using. And so it's very variable. Yeah.
Okay, did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments on this item?
I did just want to make
Please,
one
yes.
more comment on the power purchase agreements Amelia mentioned. We haven't really explored, what kind of rate we might get if we did do a power purchase agreement. It's possible that if we did a power purchase agreement, basically that works as if you're paying them, you know, your new electric rate, it's possible we could get a lower rate from that than we would what we're paying for electric, so then we could achieve savings. We just don't know because we haven't done those numbers, but that would be a way for the city to just go ahead and do solar without having to pay that upfront cost. And then you can eventually buy that system from the company if it makes financial sense at the time. So I just want to put that out there as an option.
Yeah, thank you for actually clarifying that. I actually didn't think about buying their software. My main takeaway from hearing all this is energy grid protection at the end of the day. I mean, we will be seeing a larger usage of energy in not just in Maine, just all throughout the country. We're just using more and more energy all the time, and creating a flexible energy grid is going to be really important when we start to see ongoing crises. I mean, right now, if I remember off the top of my head, just for transportation itself, 50% of all of our carbon emissions come from our transportation overall. That's a whole other different sector, I get that, but we as a state heavily rely on carbon emissions for our energy. And I think it is important to start to branch out other options, even if it does seem small. I think it does open us up to potentially really great collaborations or partnerships in the future to not just make things cheaper for us, but to also make us safer as a city from an energy perspective. So I just, again, thank you so much for your presentation today, and thank you for presenting this forward. I don't, oh yes, please, Councilor Freeman, yes.
Sorry, just one more question.
Of course.
The fixed rate of 11 cents a kilowatt hour, that's for the supply
That's, yeah.
or delivery?
Yeah.
That's the supply,
Yeah.
right? And just
Yes,
one
please.
follow-up, I think we should consider and perhaps look at this again, because I would be very surprised if supply prices didn't go up, given what's going on with gas and oil. That always trickles down to electricity prices because we are very dependent on natural gas for electric generation. So we're probably gonna see supply prices go up. And I assume they're not going to be offering a fixed rate at quite that low. I mean, I'm just guessing here, but it might make more sense at a later date. There might be more savings to be.
So I'm not seeing anything unless staff has other options. You were just looking for council committee guidance on this, right?
If there's any direction you want us to pursue with it or not.
So far, I think the only direction is a future conversation regarding community solar. I think that would be worthwhile to have. Would any other counselor like to give guidance to staff? Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. With that said, we will now move on to agenda item number 3, the acceptance of open space in a subdivision known as Rose Edge.
Yeah. This was a recent subdivision that was approved for 22 residential lots off Pushaw Road, and they're proposing to create a public road and 15 acres of open space. We did recommend to the applicant, and they were amenable to deeding that open space to the city, just because there have frequently been problems with open space when it's either divided up among the property owners, which they were initially proposing, or when it's owned by an HOA, that taxes are often not paid, and then we end up having to take the property anyway, but then it becomes more complicated. And so we thought it might be simpler to just have the city just go ahead and accept the open space. So that was our recommendation, but the council does need to accept that first before they can get their final subdivision approval. So that's why we're bringing it here.
Okay, thank you so much. Any counselors want to open up with a question or a comment? Oh, yes, Councilor Beck.
Sure, the question I had is when we take in an open space like that, what are the stipulations that come with it as far as, don't do anything with it, do we have to mow, anyways, grass to mow, or anything we have to do to maintain it? What's all involved with taking it?
That was actually one of my questions I'm gonna ask.
No, we don't have to, and a lot of the open space that we see in subdivisions is often wetlands. So, unmanaged open space essentially, and a lot of what this open space is also wetlands, so.
Okay. Did I answer your question, Counselor Beck?
Sure, just a follow-up. So it sounds like then, it would be deeded to the city, but the idea of this land is it would just be there, just space there that it's just space and no more to it than that.
Yeah, that's what I was reading, unless there's clarification on, okay. I guess I don't have any further questions on this unless any other council member has any further questions or if a staff member has a clarification. Yes, Councilor Floon.
Okay, I don't know a lot about the work that goes into these subdivisions, but I know there was a subdivision in another area and there was a newspaper article and there were issues with like some flooding in that area because of how the subdivision was done. And I'm sorry, I don't know any more details than that, but I guess I just want to make sure that that's not something that could happen here.
No, I'm sorry.
No, you're good, no worries.
When we look at subdivisions, we have to look at flood risk. They have to submit a flood risk map and everything, and this was not in a flood hazard area at all. And actually having wetlands can help mitigate flood risk. That's one of their benefits, so they're preserving a lot of wetland here.
Okay, yes, Councilor Beck.
And just a follow-up question about liability. If for some reason someone goes back there and explores whatever, they get hurt themselves, is there any liability that could come back on the city because we own it?
I don't know, I don't think so.
And then typically
Seeing
that's
Assistant City Manager Courtney O'Donnell approaching, sorry to interrupt, Director Creek. Yes, please.
Thank you. No more than any other city-owned property. So, yeah.
That was clarifying. Any other thoughts, questions, comments, quarrels, quibbles, complaints? So we are looking for a recommendation on this. So unless there are any issues or amendments, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and a second. We will have to do a roll call vote. So Councilor Beck,
Yes.
Councilor Fish,
Yes.
Councilor Falloon,
Yes.
Councilor Mallard,
Yes.
and I will be a yes, 5-0. That will move on.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We are now going to move on to agenda item number 4, the Downtown Bangor Partnership, the annual report and budget discussion. And if I could invite Director Lundy to the table, please. Say, I love that jacket, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Spring, time to be colorful.
If you would, but please go ahead and take it away. Unless, Ann, did you have anything you want to introduce? Okay.
I'll keep it short and sweet. I know you guys have all been here for a really long time tonight and you have more to discuss, but we've had a really exciting year in downtown. We've seen lots of really positive growth with businesses coming in. For the first time, we did kind of a longevity study. Some of the more volatile businesses that are in downtown would be your retail and your restaurants, and determine that we're doing way better than the national averages, which is really exciting. And we have another building under development, activating our buildings in downtown. It's great for economic growth. It's also great for diversifying the tax base in Bangor. I know at this point in time in the year, a lot of thought goes into thinking about austerity measures and the tax burden on residential payers, but the other side of that coin is growth and development, and bringing new tax dollars in via development. And I think we've done a good job of positioning Bangor to be in a growth scenario, which is pretty exciting. We've also had some successes with our ambassador program. I think it's been a good year for them. Like launching any program, the first year had its bumps and fits and starts. But I think we've really hit a stride and we have a great team and they're doing good work. I'd say kind of the biggest challenge that we face with the program is that the goal for what success, our KPI, success looks for us, that people don't have to call and complain about things and they're just handled. And I think they do enough of that, fixing problems before anybody notices them, that sometimes people don't even realize that they're doing anything at all, until you start to show them the data about all the different things that have happened. And so that's kind of our plan for the year moving forward, is to do a better job communicating about the things that they are doing so that people understand the impact that they're having. With that, I'd entertain any questions from anyone about things that you saw in the plan or.
Yes, and but before I open up to questions, I do just want to add that there's a topic or a conversation topic that usually goes around that we never see these ambassadors out there. And I do live downtown. I can assure you, I talk to them quite often, both at night and during the day. And as Miss Director Lundy pointed out, is if you're not seeing them, that usually means that they're engaged doing something at the end of the day. And I don't want to get into the full history as to why we have Street Plus, but this has been a program or a service, I should say, that has been requested for many, many, many years. And I do want to reiterate that these are services that this city needs, and the city needed them regardless of how we were going to approach these service needs in any way, shape, or form. And so that's how we got to this point in history. And so I do want to make sure that we are all understanding that it took a long, long time and a lot of effort to get to this point in order to get what was needed for services in this city. So I just want to make sure that the history of that is covered. With that, any questions or comments from council members? Yes, Councilor Falloon.
A couple of comments and then I don't know if it's really a question, but I was excited to read this, like in all of the things that are happening. It's exciting to see, and so thank you for all your work, and with the flowers and everything. It just looks great downtown. And thank you also for not requesting an increase to the special assessment. That was very exciting too. I guess my question is, when does the contract with Streets Plus expire? Like, that's 3 years, right? And how far?
Yeah, so this would be the third year that we're entering. This new fiscal year will be the third year of the contract with them. And I think it will be a great year to kind of evaluate where we're at. I mean, truthfully, when we first launched into this program, my hope was that kind of the support systems that everybody was talking about would be more in place, so that at the end of those 3 years, we wouldn't be facing some of the challenges that we were facing when we first requested this program. I do think that we are in a position today where they're kind of even more necessary than they were when we were originally requesting them. Like, I just see more activity on the street. You know, in the report, like, I just see a lot of interventions happening. I am hopeful that over the course of the next year, there'll be enough changes that we won't be in the same place where we need those same kinds of services. And, you know, that's a thought and a conversation, but it's kind of hard to plan for that when it hasn't happened yet. You know what I mean? Like, how do you plan for like the dissolution of a service while also ratcheting up another service? And like, you kind of almost have to have the improvements happen and phase something out. My general perspective on it. But yeah, I will say that when we went into the first time when we approached it, it was for ARPA money, and I was thinking to myself, like, oh, maybe by the end of the extension of or this contract, we'll be in a different place. And I don't think we find ourselves in a different place at all. I think, you know, some of the issues that we're facing have grown. I think that they do a really great job within the bounds of what they're allowed to do. I do think sometimes clarity around the ordinances, which is why we introduced those ordinances last fall, because they will only go as far as like our police department is gonna go in enforcing something. So for, like the sidewalk, not to like bring us all back a month, but like, the sidewalk in front of the library is a great example. Like they had a situation where, during their time, for 6 months or so, they had been successfully telling people, hey, you can't sleep here on the sidewalk. And they kept people from sleeping on the sidewalk. And then the minute that kind of the policy changed around that, they were no longer able to be effective in that. And I think we saw a lot of public pushback. I think it exhausted people's compassion and desire to help, which is kind of what we wanted to avoid happening, because if you can make people feel safe and comfortable, they feel in a better position to be helpful to those around them. And I really do think that we kind of opened a can of anger. I haven't enjoyed watching, I'm going off on a tangent now, I haven't enjoyed watching the last few council meetings where people are just at the microphone kind of at each other. It's been the opposite of the community building that I think we like to do. And I think the more that we can kind of manage disruptive behaviors so that people can live their, regular lives, the more supporters that we're gonna have for helping people.
You had a follow-up question?
Just a follow-up comment. We had a conversation when we met with the police chief, Chief Hathaway, and talking about the constable program, which I guess the council had considered, and that was before my time. And so some of us, I think, were interested in like perhaps revisiting that, but obviously we want to kind of evaluate this program, maybe have that discussion, see what changes take place. We've got our committee on homelessness that's now formed, our committee on housing. We took a first vote. So, hopefully we'll see some changes kind of come out of all of those things too. So I think we'll need to kind of look at all of those things together.
Yeah, I think a constable program is a really great thing. Portland, downtown Portland is bringing one in this year. They are also continuing to maintain their ambassador program that runs through Street Plus as well. Because one of the differences with Street Plus and the ambassador program that I really like is that I often find, with city services, they're kind of siloed. So you have BCAT who's gonna go in and like talk to the people and, kind of be that liaison to like case management. You have PD who's there to like enforce the law. You have Public Works who's there to remove any detritus that's left behind. Whereas, when you're working with an ambassador program, they kind of, unless it's a really complex situation, just handle all that in like a one-stop shop. And so with your constables, for example, like they might kind of enforce behavior barriers, but they're not going to holistically handle all the other elements.
And if I can actually piggyback off of that, and thank you for that question, thank you for that explanation, Director Lundy. The thing I want to make sure when talking about this is not so much the nomenclatures of the entities that provide the services, but the services themselves. Regardless of how these services are provided, it's going to be really important to understand that as a city, we can't just take away this service and then expect things to continue to be continued as is right now. These are services that were in dire need 5 years ago. And I think Director Lundy said it very succinctly that they're needed more than ever now. And so if we were to entertain a constable program, which I would absolutely would consider and entertain, whether we maintain Street Plus or whether we phase in a constable program, my main concern is making sure we still as a city have those services that people have relied on for the last few years now. So regardless of the approach that we go, my mindset is the services have to stay. But that's just me for this conversation. Were there any other questions or comments? Councilor Beck, then Councilor Fish.
Yep, the question I had is, there's an article in the paper about Place for AI recently. Is that in this budget, and how much does that service cost?
So we paid for Place for AI out of the current budget that we're in. Everybody paid in at that. We paid in at $1,000 because we're the smallest fish in the whole mix. The contract was never launched, although the plan is still to launch that. The article I have some thoughts on the article. It was like, I read that and I was like, tell me you don't understand Placer AI without telling me you don't understand Placer AI, because I do think that I understand people's real concerns with this true tracking stuff that is emerging. You know, I know people are concerned about Flocked and like somebody taking their image and following them around. I think I've had two people reach out to me to talk to me about Placer AI. And that kind of the impression that they got was that there was some sort of device being installed that was going to track their behavior. When in reality it's kind of like, oh no, you're carrying the tracker in your pocket and basically it's tracking the toilet paper that you buy at Hannaford. And the people who use Placer AI, they aren't so much generating the data so much as they're like looking at information about that you've already given to somebody else somewhere else. It's not generative, and the AI component isn't looking at you as a person on the street AI. The AI is just kind of sorting the data that you've given to Facebook, to Gmail, to Hannaford, to Walmart, to Amazon. Yeah, so there's a fundamental misunderstanding about it, which was very frustrating from that article.
Did that answer your question, and do you have a follow-up?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Counselor Fish?
I think over the last almost 3 years, 2.5 years, that the ambassador program has really emerged and sort of settled in. They have a relationship, they understand what's going on downtown and even the changes. And I think it's hard to quantify what you've prevented and what your presence is doing in preventing things. It's easy when an incident happens and there's a report and you can put a number on it. And with their presence down there with what they're preventing, and I know that there are a lot of the mischiefs at night and they're out there a lot at night. So there's a misconception that they're not there and they're not doing anything. So these detailed reports, I know last year we got one and I think there was a software glitch or something that happened. But the last couple of reports we've received have really been good in capturing a lot more activity. And I agree whether the future would be to continue with Street Plus or not, something like Street Plus, or maybe with them and collaborating and continuing to improve on our safety downtown is imperative. So thank you for this report.
Are there any other questions or comments from council members or Director Krieg or Director Lundy?
I would just say that I know that a lot of the time it's been talking about the ambassador program, and that makes sense because it's the biggest part of our budget. But I don't want the organization as a whole to get lost in that, because there is a lot of stuff that we do and we are always out there. I put down those volunteer hours, and that's just to date. We're in kind of our busiest volunteer part of the season with people volunteering their time outdoors in the gardens and things like that. So I do think that the organization as a whole is really focused on that mission of building community, of enhancing shared public spaces, and creating a sense of collaboration, all for the purpose of creating economic growth. And I feel like we've been doing a really great job of that, and I don't want that to get lost in the whole ambassador conversation. So I do understand why we have to focus on it so much, because it is huge.
Thank you for that. Any other final thoughts or questions? We are looking for a staff recommendation on this, unless there is an amendment. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna add, the reason why is under the statute, you'll be asked to at your next meeting, have a public hearing on this as required, and then accept or otherwise edit the proposed budget. So.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So did I misread that? Do you need action on this tonight then to move forward?
It'd be good to forward a recommendation to full council.
Okay, sounds good. So if there is a recommendation to move forward or an amended version to move forward, I would entertain such a motion.
I made a recommendation to move this to full council.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
That's fine.
Moved and seconded. We will need to do a roll call vote. Counselor Beck,
Yes.
Counselor Fish,
Yes.
Counselor Falloon,
Yes.
Counselor Mallard,
Yes.
and I'll be a yes, 5-0. This will move on.
Can I ask a question? Is there anything else that you want included in the materials for the upcoming meeting, or is this all, you have everything you need?
So I am, I believe I have everything that I need, but, are there other counselors that have any other material requests that they would want? Yes, Counselor Beck.
I would just say, just make sure that we've got the spreadsheet you given us before showing what Street Plus does by category.
Okay,
Be helpful so we can see it quantified, they're busy,
yeah,
And
yeah.
that really illustrated that.
I think that would be a good point. That would also cater to Counselor Fish's comments earlier about showing the data that never really gets discussed.
Yeah, I think I see the best reactions to the heat maps and the point maps that show the specific activities. Sometimes people say like, oh, well, I've never seen them around my building. Here's the heat map for last month, and you can see they're all over the place picking up litter and needles and intervening in this way or that way, and it is really helpful because again, like the goal is that nobody sees the problem, nobody reports the problem. It's just a non-issue so that we can remove the conversation around it.
All right. Thank you so much. And we will be moving on to agenda number 5, discussion of possible moratorium on certain uses, needle exchange and chemical dependency clinics. I do also want to invite a guest to answer any potential questions that we as a council might have at the table. Mr. Hurley is from Needle Point Sanctuary, and he will be at the table to answer any questions that staff or council members have at this point. Mr. Hurley, thank you for joining us at the dais.
Thank you for having me.
Started, Councilor Fish.
Yes, please.
There was a error in the packet, the draft proposal for the syringe exchange program had some old outdated content, and I just had attached the wrong version. It was my fault. So I did print out a corrected version. I don't think it impacts the discussion at all, but I wanted to make sure that you had a copy of the corrected version, and it'll get updated online as well.
Okay, Counselor Fish, this is your item, so if you want to proceed with it, you may do so.
Yes, this draft was exactly that, just a draft. I knew that it would initiate a lot of conversation, which I need to do, which I also expect some changes and hopefully some additional great ideas to add to it. My thought on this, I actually went to the previous manager over a year and a half ago with a number of ordinances I wanted to bring to the table for discussion. But my thought was that I really wanted to have other stakeholders get their attention to bring them to the table, other towns, other stakeholders that work with substance use and needle exchanges to come to the table to include the city with what they're doing, more transparency. I think my thought was 20 years ago, we had 7 patients that were using methadone and traveling to Waterville, and now we have thousands. And I would like to see an ordinance that would encourage, for instance, Acadia to come to the table and us to be able to perhaps provide some guidance where we require them to, if they have a patient that they know has been dropped off, and that they know they don't have any housing or any other resources, what are they doing now? Because I feel that we have a lot of people that are on our streets that come here for services because we are a service center. But I think if other towns are bringing in or knowing they have patients and individuals that need these services we provide, I just want us as a council to be able to have a little more teeth in requiring accountability, transparency, and collaboration with us as a city, and expand it not to just the stakeholders we have, specifically the syringe services and the methadone clinics, but also as a result of this, I'm hoping that somehow when we're done with this, is talking about this as a council, maybe can elaborate a little more with some guidelines that would bring other municipalities to the table and other stakeholders. So this isn't an idea of a cut in stone. This is an idea to bring this ordinance to the table and have a discussion where I hope, especially with now our new homeless committee, maybe input, but I just feel that we have to start having some ordinances where even some of the nonprofits, I identified these, but out of almost 1,300 nonprofits, and I've been trying to track them down with some other resource professionals at the University of Maine. There's a great number of them that we don't even really know what they're doing. And then I know that they're not all for our vulnerable community, but I feel we as community leaders have a responsibility of asking for more statistical information and transparency and more in collaboration with us as a community. And that's why I came up with at least these two ordinances. There's a number of other ones, but this finally got to the table and I'm happy for that.
Okay, so the way this is going to work is, but because Councilor Fisher, you were the one who brought this up, if there are any questions, I'm either going to direct them back to you unless they specifically ask for a staff member or to Mr. Hurley,
Sure.
okay?
Yeah.
So with that, are there any questions, Councilor Floon?
Not necessarily a question. I just wanted to share some information that I
Yes,
did a little
yes.
research. So like I have also wondered about this and what could happen. And so my first thought was, what has happened in other communities when they have placed a moratorium on these things? So one study examined some arrest trends before and after a needle exchange program opened in Baltimore. And researchers compared crime trends in those neighborhoods with and without the program and found no significant increase in violent crime, property crime, or drug-related arrests with the exchange program. In 2023, a federal systemic review from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs concluded that a few things, which I think we have probably already heard before, but syringe service programs likely reduce HIV transmission, reduce risky injection behaviors. They help connect people to treatment and overdose education, and they don't appear to increase neighborhood crime rates or unsafe syringe disposal overall. In West Virginia, they had an SSP suspension study in 2019, and it examined the suspension of rural syringe programs after political and community pressure led to restrictive policy changes. They interviewed people who inject drugs after the program was effectively shut down. They found increased syringe sharing, increased reuse of needles, greater fear of arrest, reduced access to HIV prevention and overdose resources, more barriers to entering treatment programs. There's another one in Canada. When they closed that syringe service program, they saw sharp declines in distribution and collection, reduced contact with vulnerable populations, reports of increased syringe use, reuse, and underground syringe sales, thousands of syringes unaccounted for. There's another Connecticut needle exchange study from 1999, similar results. I'm not going to elaborate on those further, but there's a lot of evidence showing that there's no direct correlation to crime, but there are a lot of health impacts. I think the more important thing that I want to share is that, and to me, this would be a deciding factor right here. In 2016, the Metro Treatment Center, the Penobscot County Metro Treatment Center sought to increase capacity at its Hogan Road Clinic in Bangor from 300 to 500. Per city code, it was required to seek a new license and hold a public hearing to do so. Counselors at that time pushed hard against clinic representatives on why they were choosing Bangor rather than expanding to northern Maine, and even questioned the effectiveness of methadone over Suboxone. In August 2026, the council voted 7-2 against allowing the expansion. The clinic sued Bangor in federal court, arguing that by treating methadone clinics differently from other medical facilities, the city's ordinance discriminated against people seeking to recover from addiction under the Americans with Disabilities Act. a federal judge found the ordinance discriminatory, writing that singling out methadone clinics and devising special rules for them as opposed to all other types of clinics was facially discriminatory. So in December of 2016, the Bangor City Council voted unanimously to repeal the ordinance. So there's already a precedent set for this. And I doubt we want to go down that road again. That's it.
Thank you for those comments and yes, you may comment, yes.
This is a moratorium for us to do more research. It's not saying we're gonna close the ones that exist. But it is, what I'm hoping to achieve is that, for instance, CDC won't give out permits where we're finding that one has popped up without any involvement of the city of Bangor. We already, I know for, as a matter of fact, our own Bangor Health and Community Services has put in for, to be registered as one. I'm all for that. But I think that there are other communities besides Bangor, just because we're a service center. There are other communities that I think also have facilities and the capability, especially with collaborating with the state, to be able to look elsewhere. Cities with our population do not typically have 3 methadone clinics. And I'm just saying, we have got all we can handle. And when we've seen the increase of our vulnerable on our streets, there's something missing between the collaboration between these services, better collaborating with us and also with the state. I'm hoping this will get the state's attention and other communities' attention to work with us and have other methadone clinics that are closer to Aroostook County and other rural areas that need them. City of Bangor doesn't need to have them all. And if we do, we need to have better collaboration. I'm not saying close them.
City Manager Lear.
So I want to make sure that we're leveraging the expertise that we have with our Director of Public Health. So it sounds like that's sort of where we're going with this conversation. So I'd like to give up my seat and have Jen come up and help.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Thank you for that recommendation. We are now being approached by Director Gunderman. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And if you want to go ahead and start with either if you have a statement that you want to give, or you want to wait for a counselor to ask you a question, please feel free.
I think maybe I'll just start with a statement that I think important to level set is that what we know through the research is that syringe services are a very important tool in public health, not just only for HIV and hepatitis C prevention, but also for prevention of other really important health outcomes like endocarditis, which is a really serious heart problem that can happen when people reuse needles. So I think I just want to level set that the research is really clear that syringe services are really important. And just to add to the research, oftentimes what we hear is, and I'm sure Willie hears this too, is, well, we have syringe service providers. Why is there still HIV? And one of the things that's really challenging in public health is how to measure prevention. And so what we can compare ourselves to is Scott County, Indiana. I think I may have referred this before. Scott County, Indiana is about the population size of the city of Bangor. They didn't have any SSPs, and their numbers of HIV climbed to over 100. And so while we can't say we have prevented X amount of cases, what we can say in comparable environments and communities that SSPs have been a really important tool. That's, I guess, maybe I'll just kind of level set at that.
Sure, that's absolutely fine. Counselor Dean, you have a question or statement?
Yes, I'm glad you've joined us at the table because this is probably a question for you. Do I address it to Carolyn?
You can address it to either Director Gunderman if it's to her, or if you have something directly to Counselor Fish, you can direct it to her.
Well, I guess it's to both. After reading this through, I think I understand her reasoning. Coming up with a 180-day moratorium would give Bangor a chance to more readily be able to see who's coming into the area and where they're setting up shop without the CDC dictating it for us. So I think that's where you're coming from as far as 180-day moratorium. My concern with the 180-day moratorium would be, say, Wabanaki or Needle Point Sanctuary for some reason was not able to fulfill their duties. Would that then limit us if we needed to find someone else to come in, like we've had to do in the past? Does that affect, or is this just new people coming in? How does that work?
Would you like to
It is-
respond first, Counselor Ferdinand?
And again, this is up for conversation. My intent behind this was that we have the number, so it's the number that we have that would keep, they'd be like grandfathered like any other new ordinance. They would be grandfathered, so we have the number we have and the service providers we have. It was also, I know that the city, I don't know if you became certified, but I was thinking that our own health department would also be certified for syringe service. I felt that with the needle situation and the public being so concerned of all the needles we have out there, we haven't come up with other policies about, you know, is it one, you know, or 100, or how do we help with, or even, you know, other ideas behind the scene of the needles that are out there. You know, we talked the other day about maybe a redemption, you know, turn them in and get some credit. There's a lot of ideas. So I just wanted to back off. We have some great providers, Wabanaki, Willie's Group, our city, and what we have existing. I just wanted to, especially now with our new committee, take a look at where we're at. What else should we be looking at so that we're more effective for not just for the vulnerable people and still trying to help keep our diseases under control and have better health resources for needle availability, but also to just try to get out of the needle situation on the streets for our general public is out of control. So I just thought this is a 180-day moratorium. It doesn't say we want to close them. It's just saying before anyone new comes up, doesn't mean we can't come back and look at a special situation, but it gives us a chance to work with our homeless community and just put a moratorium before they continue to pop up, and just maybe add some teeth, more accountability, more transparency, more information for not just council, but for our public.
Director Gunderman, I know Councillor Dean directed the question to both of you. Did you need a repeat of the question, or are you good to respond to her?
I think I'm good to respond.
Okay.
I think if this moratorium gets passed, I would have some questions on sort of what are the pieces of information that would want to be collected for further understanding of cities' strategies or activities or policy. I will just sort of back up for a second. At this point, Needle Point Sanctuary and Wabanaki Public Health and Wellness are the two Maine CDC certified SSPs. Those are the only two SSPs that are working in the Bangor area. So they are certified by Maine CDC. I will also just back up for a second and really please chime in if, correct me if I'm wrong, but when a new organization wants to become certified, and we haven't started that process yet, they go through an application process with the Maine CDC. Part of that process is a public notice that comes to us, it comes to the police department. The rules have changed a little bit in terms of once an organization is certified and they go through that initial process, they have some flexibility with their services. They don't have to go through that whole process again. One of the challenges, to be honest with you, that I've had with the Maine CDC's process is that we aren't brought in to Maine CDC's conversations about the city's perspective on that organization or the process or what we want. To me, that's been the most challenging part, is not having a collaborative conversation with Maine CDC. So there is that original public notice that can, now the new rule changes, there doesn't need to be a public notice when that organization wants to maybe do a different service within their operational area. Is that correct, Willie?
More or less.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're totally fine. And Mr. Hurd, please, you may speak broadly on this
Yeah,
topic as
absolutely.
you see fit.
So I had a great conversation with Carolyn the other day, and it made me think, and I kind of came up with some thoughts around that. And I want to note that, you know, this memorandum is not like an anti-syringe service program memorandum, right? So the question of like the validity of syringe services, that's not what we're talking about. We know that they're valid. We know that this community needs them right now. We've had a lot of conversations about that, especially in an HIV outbreak. I can speak a bit to the certification process. But what I was thinking about was trying to articulate addressing your concern about an outside entity coming in. And I can't speak to the methadone clinics, but I can say with like pretty much like 100% confidence, you're not going to see a new syringe service program emerge in Bangor from out of state or even elsewhere within the state. And the reason being is because there's really no economic incentive to do so. Syringe service programs, the certification process is pretty lengthy, and the access to funding, like for example, our program, 1/5 of our funding comes from the state certification, right? So that's 80% of our funding that we have to pursue elsewhere. And syringe services are not a billable service. You can't bill main care. It's not the kind of thing that would draw in an outside entity like a larger nonprofit or something like that. It doesn't exist quite for syringe services. And it's a very risky time period for syringe services generally. So during the Biden administration, this is really the first time in recent American history where there was funding available for this kind of thing. Today, there is still a federal ban on funding for syringes. So I get pass-through funding from the state through the federal government. I can spend it on lots of things. I can't actually spend it on syringes. So every dollar that I want to spend on syringes and some other additional injection equipment, I have to find that elsewhere. And there's even fears amongst harm reduction programs that there might be some sort of like federal ban on syringe services, right? Which would mean basically a similar thing that the federal government has done to reproductive care providers, which is like, well, if you offer abortion services, you can't receive any federal dollars. There's a fear that that could happen to syringe services. So the logic that would lead an outside program to come into Bangor and start a syringe service program, it's really not there. It exists for programs like you might, like if you had a program that was like a little mini needle point, the way that we started like a little street outreach group that was doing this kind of thing, that would be the kind of program thinking about coming in, getting certified. And then you have programs like the public health department that see the need every day, right? Because they're working on this HIV outbreak, and organizations that are just doing like, frankly, heroic work with this outbreak. So I wanted to speak to that, just like address like that concern in the first place. I don't know if the same calculus exists for methadone clinics. I'm not a methadone provider. I can't really speak to that. Let me see if there's anything else I kind of want to note there. In terms of like the certification process, it has improved a little bit. So Needlepoint, you know, when we got certified, we didn't communicate a ton with the city of Bangor because the certification process didn't require it. And honestly, I don't think we knew better, right? We kind of are busy trying to do outreach at Camp Hope and do 1,000 other things. At the time, we were a volunteer group filling out this, you know, my certification was like, it's like an 80-page document, right? The most recent rulemaking, it has an additional thing that does encourage a little bit more collaboration with the city of Bangor, which is that any place that you get certified must be properly zoned, and like you must get like a note from the city. I'm not sure if it's like a note from the city, but basically like you have to confirm that like the place that you're going to open it is already zoned. And as a result of Needlepoint certification process, we were able to determine precisely what zoning codes are appropriate uses for syringe service programs, right? So you do have a little bit more of a sense of like, okay, if for some reason a new program did come in, it has to be within these certain things. So I think it's totally appropriate for the city to work with programs like Needlepoint to do everything you want to accomplish with this without doing the actual moratorium. And I think like from my viewpoint, like I'd be willing to enter into like a memorandum of understanding with the city of Bangor around some of the processes for like if we were going to buy a new building or if we wanted to expand outreach to such and such a place. Like we're talking with Jen and with the CDC right now about like what does delivery services look like in the city of Bangor, because there's some new regulations around how you can do this. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, what were you finished with early?
I finished it with just like a yeah.
Okay. So I do want to speak on this from my own perspective before we move on. when I initially first saw this, I was already very hesitant toward the moratorium just because of the protected individuals that technically they have a federal disability. And so that opens up a lot of serious legal exposure. On just that front alone, I really saw this as a very problematic moratorium. But when I heard Councillor Fish, you were talking about wanting to bring this over to a discussion, and then later on wanting to potentially involve the state more. I really wish Councillor Carson were here tonight, because I would be telling him this is probably something we want to put on the legislative committee agenda. So if you wanted to revisit this topic and actually try to make it a larger discussion that brings multiple parties together to actually tackle this issue in a much broader sense, as opposed to just focusing on Bangor, I think that would be very appropriate. I would be hesitant right now to move forward with this specific one, just because of the plethora of issues I do see with it right now. But I'm more than happy, I'm sure Councillor Carson would be happy to try to figure out a way to bring this topic up to a larger group to actually see if there is some sort of headway we can do with this. Director Gilman, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I also wanted to say one of the other pieces that you're concerned about that came up with this is the needle waste. And I just want to acknowledge that. I have sat during public comment and I have heard the concerns, and they're absolutely valid. Last year, our department started to think about what are the options around needle waste. It's complicated in Bangor because we have an ordinance where people can't put it in their laundry container and leave it out because it goes to a sorting facility. All of this to say is, I have put it on my strategic sort of priority list to bring the partners together, Needlepoint, Wabanaki, our own department, Street Plus, to sit together and say, how are we going to collaborate better on needle waste? What is the education that we need to do to the public? What is the education we need to do to business partners? So I understand that your ordinance comes with that concern in mind too. And I just want you to know that it is a priority on my list and hoping to do more in that area.
I don't know if you want to respond to any of
Sure,
that.
I'd like to respond to both of you. Yes, Council Leonard, it was reading this and I wanted to get it to the table, but there was so much more behind it. I was hoping through conversations we could contribute to it. A moratorium, I think, was my way of, not just we as a council and as a city, but many of the residents just feel that we are experiencing the fallout, and even though we're a service center, Bangor isn't the only community. There's many communities and they have vulnerable individuals that need syringe services and they need outreach in their backyard. So to me, it was our way of saying, hey, we want to be partners, we want to collaborate, but we've only got so much resources and we have to bring people to the table. So I had several motives that this would get the attention I was hoping of other communities that say, Bangor's got all they can handle. I'm very happy with the providers we have. Willie and I had hours and hours talk the other day, which I came to learn a lot and greatly appreciated. And we do have great service providers, but I think they're here at the table. They will come. They are willing to collaborate with us, and I do want their input. But I do think we have to come up with something. If it's not a moratorium, we need to look at this in an ordinance way, to have more transparency, more information, and pushback to other communities as well as the state to participate. So I'm missing Councillor Carson tonight as well. But I figured this would get tabled. I'm for tabling it. And I hope everybody contributes to the conversation, that we at least take this and just don't drop it. But we have to start putting some boundaries and limitations. We have to bring other municipalities to the table. And until we can get some type of control on this, I do think we have to set some limits and some boundaries. So I appreciate both of your input on it.
Director Gunderman?
Would it be helpful if I got you the list of the other SSPs throughout the state? So you have a sense of where they're located, particularly the ones that are close to us?
Perhaps so. I think my concern's not so much what they're doing so much as what we're doing, and maybe other people participating more, stepping up to the plate a little more, offering some of the people in their own communities. Just because we're a service member center doesn't mean we get everybody, other communities should be taking more responsibility. And the state should be taking more responsibility. So I thought if we said, this is it, enough is enough, this got all we can handle, until we can regroup and figure out other ideas, of how we can work together. So that was the point. I very much expected this would be tabled.
Okay, so we do have this item on the table right now. Oh, and unless there was any other comments, yes, Councilor Beck.
Sure, I guess I'd like to hear from both of our experts about, what the effect is of handcuffing ourselves during an HIV outbreak. One, and two is when I was doing my own research this weekend, also coming across the fact that I had no idea that medically assisted treatment was connected to also HIV treatment. Connections are also made there as well. So I guess either like to hear some more information about that or correct me if I heard wrong. But those are the two first questions I have about this.
Okay. Are there any answers that staff or Mr. Hurley that you're able to give on that question? Yes, Director Gunneman, and then Mr. Hurley, if you want to answer as well.
I will say that because we have not started our application, this moratorium will stop us from completing our application.
And just to elaborate, that was not my intent.
No,
So I wanted to bring this to the table, and somehow I thought we have to kind of get a way around that.
Yes, and so what I would say is, every touch point is an important touch point for engagement, for building relationships. We don't have a crystal ball. It does make, to answer your question, it does make me a little nervous that we're going to put a restriction when we have this really important tool that's evidence-based to address HIV and hepatitis C. So I do have some worries and concerns about it becoming a tool that we have at the table, but we just wouldn't have that flexibility.
Mr. Hurley, do you need the question re-asked to you?
I don't think so. I mean, so this specific moratorium is not necessarily like a handcuff on existing programs. But I will say that, the reason a lot of other organizations don't start certain service programs is because they come with a lot of heat, right? Like, you guys have seen the meetings that we've had here. Like, you become a syringe service provider, you're gonna have a lot of support, but you're gonna have a lot of people who don't understand, and you have to engage in a lot of like constant diplomacy. So there are municipalities that are not supportive of syringe service programs at all. And they probably watch municipalities like Bangor. And so they see something like this and they might interpret it in a way that they would use to restrict services. And Bangor has the benefit of, I think, having a lot of professionals who are able to speak to the need of syringe services, having a council that gets it, and it being in the middle of experiencing an HIV outbreak. And the reality is there are small communities in Maine that are eventually going to be experiencing their own outbreaks that don't have syringe service programs. And then that's probably gonna when they're gonna start them, right? I think there is a need for statewide conversations about the importance of syringe service programs. I think that, whether it's other SSP programs or more importantly, there are contacts at the CDC that the council can speak with, that we can connect you with, that could answer concretely what kind of the state's logic is with the way they control the certification process. I feel like there was something at the tail end of the question, handcuffs programs, and then
Medically assisted treatment, about how do they factor into HIV care and
I can't speak to that. Maybe could a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the touch point, the one other thing I wanted to add is SSP services are more than needle exchange. They include counseling and testing for HIV, hepatitis C, STIs, their referral services, their education. So it's also remember that SSP is not just the needle part of it, but it's a comprehensive service that we take as a full package.
Okay, so and it's okay if there are other questions that want to be asked, or if there's more discussion that want to be had. Because of the nature of this ordinance, I'm just gonna give my personal opinion. And I know, Councilor Fish, you said you wanted to potentially table this because of the topic being a moratorium. I just wouldn't support tabling it only because of the topic as it is. What I'm not saying though is to ban this topic from altogether future conversations. If you want to bring this up again to like a workshop or what we said earlier, legislative committee, you would have my support for that. But if you did want to make a motion to table this, personally, I wouldn't be in support of that, just because the nature of the moratorium status on these SSPs. And I do see your hand if you want to respond.
Why I asked for 180-day moratorium is because we have an epidemic of the needle situation out on the streets every day. And the public is really, we don't have a handle on it. So this was one avenue, and it's not handcuffing anyone. It's not, would like to see it amended so we have a go around for our public health facility to get their SSP. But you know, if we want to reword it, that if there's an exception that we could reconsider. But I think right now, the needle situation in our community, on the streets, on the playgrounds, at people's municipalities, everywhere is out of control. And at least right now, we know who our partners are that are working with us in collaboration. And Willie even said himself, probably nobody else is going to come new to apply for one. So I'd rather table this and at least send the message out to our residents that we hear them and we know things are out of control as far as needles out on our streets. And with this needs work, I don't think that a moratorium would hurt us for 180 days. It's not going to hurt the providers we have. I agree with Councilor Beck. I'd like to have maybe a little more legal advice on this, but I'd like to have it tabled. But as far as the moratorium goes, we have our homeless committee we've put together. I'd like to get their input. But I don't see how asking for a moratorium is going to hurt anything. I think it will help send a message to the majority of our residents who feel they can't go anywhere without needles in their backyard, at the playground, on the streets, their business. So I just would like to have it tabled.
Okay, Councilor Beck.
I would say this, I guess I would like to have the conversation further, but I don't want this over our head. And after hearing from our experts, I like to just see this disposed of, and let's start the conversation over fresh without the moratorium over our heads. And to that, I don't support this, but the proper method is I'm going to move passage of this, and then we would discuss further and vote. But that would be the way. Is I'm moving passage.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the table. So if anyone else does want to have a comment or a question, I would entertain that, or a second if anyone wants to second Councilor Beck's motion.
So just that I'm clear, we passed this, but it continues to be up for conversation.
Right, if it passes, but the conversation, I'm happy to have the conversation, but I guess I'd like to not see it attached to this ordinance. I'd like to see it be, let's talk about needles in general, let's talk about MAT in general, and figure out what data we're looking for and all of those things. Because I get it, there's a concept out there that, 2 needle providers is too much for a community of 33,000, but those two hospitals. You go where the needs, you create when the needs there. So I'm all for collecting data and everything, but I don't think that didn't come attached with this. And I just having the moratorium over our heads with this, I don't think gets us to where we want to be. Yes, everyone wants to make sure we're on top of the syringe waste and look at that, because there's a number of places needles come from. I mean, where does it go next? Do we regulate Walmart? Do we regulate Walgreens? Do we intercept mail from Amazon? I mean, where does it end? There's a number of places it comes from. So I'm happy to have the conversation. I just don't want it attached to this. So by moving it, I'm going to vote no. But I don't want to table it. I'd rather that conversation start fresh in a workshop, not attached to this. That's where my position is.
Yes, Counselor Fish?
This isn't like Walmart or Amazon. I mean, it's an epidemic out on our streets. And if we don't table this, when's it gonna come back? It took me 1.5 years to get this far. I went to our previous manager with something like this, and this is the best we could get it to the table. This is an emergency situation with a lot of our residents. The needle exchange, I see the health need for it, and I'm happy with the providers that are working with us. We have to do something. And if we just table this, or we just take this and don't pass it, when are we gonna talk about it again? What are we gonna do and when are we gonna do it? Months, years? I mean, we have to do something, and we have to do something soon. In a moratorium, what's gonna take to get Acadia to come to the table? We actually do have somebody on our homeless, and I'm excited about that, on our homeless committee, but we're in crisis mode and we need more partners to the table now.
So I do want to add to that, this is not, if this were to fail tonight, that doesn't mean we can't continue to have a conversation. What this does mean, though, is that, and I will speak for myself on this puts the city into a dangerous situation legally and potentially to have a suit go against us as well. I don't think what we potentially gain from a moratorium, I don't see what benefit that actually does to us in the short run, because I think we can still accomplish what it is that you want to achieve without a moratorium over our head. And so what this does at the end of the day is it puts a lot of uncertainty into the status of where this council is going to go if we want to go forward with a moratorium. And I mean, I just know right off the bat, right now, based off of what you presented before me, that this would already put into jeopardy federally recognized people who are disabled. That right there is a problem that I absolutely am not going to give up on that hill for. It's that is actually that's a pretty serious issue. So I will allow Councillor Balloon, and I do want to remind people we do have a motion on the table as well.
I was just gonna reiterate that, there was a federal court case. This was related to methadone clinics and them being treated differently than other medical facilities. So just reiterating that, like that ordinance, that was against expansion, but you could argue that this is the same thing. It wouldn't allow us to expand methadone clinics in the area. That would still be considered discrimination against people seeking to recover from addiction under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And there was already a case here in Bangor with the Bangor City Council 10 years ago. So I just think, I don't disagree that we need to dig into this, but I don't think this is gonna be the way to accomplish it either, so.
Okay, I appreciate those thoughts as well. So
Just ask if we've had legal look at this. It's legal to have moratoriums, right? I mean, we're not talking about an expansion, we're talking about a moratorium.
So legal did review this. I don't know whether he specifically reviewed it through the lens of the Americans with Disabilities Act or not.
Because I know other towns do have moratoriums and they weren't sued. So I assume you can have a moratorium, but it's a question we can't answer tonight.
So to that point, Councillor Fish, I have said this multiple times. It's not illegal for municipalities or even states to pass laws that go against federal law. States have done that multiple times. And that doesn't mean, though, that those laws are enforceable, though. So we can pass this if we wanted to, but I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. I'm not comfortable doing that from a legal, but also ethical perspective. Yes, Councillor Beck.
Two things. I mean, if we're not being sued, I mean, the case that Councillor Flynn brought up, that was a law that was passed in 2008. It took 8 years to get sued, but we got sued. So that kind of also goes to the point of, we can pass whatever we like, but it doesn't mean we won't be legally challenged. But in regards to, again, the needle waste, you know, the data that I'm looking at isn't suggesting that it is SSPs that's necessarily causing all of it. I mean, the two SSP providers we have, according to the Maine CDC, Wabanaki collected 38,000 more needles than they distributed. Needle Point has a 99% return rate. There's about 2,000 needles difference. So between the two, it's a negative. You know, so there's other sources of this. Not saying we shouldn't be looking into it. I'm just saying like we shouldn't just be blaming one avenue and calling it good. I mean, we need to, you know, we'll re-examine it, but again, this isn't the vehicle, and that's why I made the motion, because I don't want to table it. I feel that I don't want this over council's head.
So I am going to, I know you have a question, Counselor Flynn, but I do want to just pay attention to the motion that's on the floor. Is there a second that we want to put forward on that, or do?
Second.
We do have a second. Okay, so with that said, if you want, I can get to your question at the end of the.
I just had a quick point, but.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. We will do a roll call vote. Counselor Beck?
No.
Counselor Fish?
Yes.
Counselor Falloon?
No.
Counselor Mallard?
Yes.
And I will be a no. That will be 2 yes, 3 no. Yes,
Just a
Counselor Beck.
procedural question. Do we have to do it for one for each ordinance, or does one motion cover them both?
That's a great question. I'm gonna be looking to the city manager for guidance on that.
I mean, I interpreted it to be the one, I'm sorry. Since they're listed as one item, I think it's fine to have disposed of them both unless someone desires to have a different outcome on one than the other.
Unless anyone has an issue with that, I'm fine with that single vote as is, and thank you for the clarification, Manager Lear. Yes, Director Gunderman.
If there's any questions or any points of clarification that the city council would like, you're more than welcome working with city manager to get them to us, and we can be working with our local organizations, looking for data from the CDC or have any questions answered for any conversations.
Thank you for that. Yes, Counselor Flynn.
Can I just make one quick point?
Of course you can.
Thank you. It occurred to me as we were talking about this, so many people are on injectable weight loss drugs at home that so many homes have needles in them already. People are getting them other places because they are in so many homes right now.
Okay. Unless there's anything else, thank you so much, Director Gunderman. Thank you so much, Mr. Hurley, for joining us at the table. All right, with that said, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we go into executive session regarding acquisition of real property or economic development under 1 MRSA 4056C.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Roll call vote. Counselor Beck?
Yes.
Counselor Fish?
Yes.
Counselor Balloon?
Yes.
Counselor Mallard?
Yes.
And I'll be a yes. We are in executive session. When you are. Okay, so we are out of executive session. Thank you so much for your patience. I will entertain a motion.
I move that we accept staff recommendation and move to full council for the restructuring of the structure of a community development loan.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. I'll do a roll call vote just in case Counselor Beck, I'm sorry, Counselor Malley gets on, which he is, forgive her. So Counselor Beck,
Yes.
Counselor Fish,
Yes.
Counselor Balloon,
Yes.
Counselor Mallard,
Yes.
and I will be a yes. There'll be 5-0 to move on. That is going to end the regularly scheduled meeting of the Business Economic Development. I just want to thank everyone for the new structure of how I want to do these committees. I know it probably elongated the conversation, but I think it's going to make the conversations much better overall. So I just want to appreciate you going through the motions for this first one. So unless anyone has anything else they would like to add, it is currently 8:36 p.m. and I will be adjourning this